All right, so if you've ever wondered exactly what happens on tummy tuck surgery day, pull up a chair because I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to me. So, all right, so my tummy tuck was scheduled for a Tuesday. My surgery was supposed to be at 9:30 in the morning. I was supposed to be there at 8:30 in the morning. So we left home. My husband drove me to the surgical center. The surgical center is about 30 miles from my house. He decides that we can take the express lane in so we don't have to leave as early. And I'm like, no, we should probably leave a little early. He's like, no, we're good. We'll take the express lane. Well, of course, that day, the express lane had not one, but two accidents. We came to a standstill in the express lane. So I actually ended up getting to the surgical center about 30 minutes late. So instead of being there at 8:30, I was there right at about 9 o'clock. Now, keep in mind, my surgery was scheduled for 9:30. So I go into the suite and I sit down, I check in and sit down, and my nurse comes in probably about 2 to 3 minutes later, and she was like, okay, Ursula, are you ready? And I'm looking at her like, no, not really. But in that moment, it really hit me like, okay, this is about to happen. You're about to do this. Like, so I stood up and I followed her out of the suite, and my husband didn't follow me. And I was like, oh, this is really about to happen. So she was walking me into the actual operating room, which was in the next suite over. And we were walking down this long hallway, and I'm really starting to consider life choices as we were walking down this long hallway. So she walks me into the surgical suite, and the first room on the right was like a very small exam room. So she takes me into the exam room, and the first thing she does is she takes my blood pressure, and then she starts going through some of the paperwork with me. Some of the paperwork that I've already signed during the pre-op appointment. The next thing she does is she gives me a cup, and she asked me to go across the hall and give a sample for a pregnancy test. So I go across the hall, give the sample for the pregnancy test, come back into the exam room. So she comes back in and she was like, great news, you're not pregnant. And I'm like, well, thank goodness for that. So she says, okay, so now I need you to undress and put this robe on. And she gives me some white compression socks to put on. So I undress and I put on the robe, I put on the white compression socks. She comes back into the room and she puts the compression cuffs on my legs. And the compression cuffs are the cuffs that expand and contract, and they use them during surgery to kind of help keep the blood moving in your legs to prevent blood clots. So she's putting the compression cuffs on my legs. The anesthesiologist comes into the room with her. So the anesthesiologist, he was nice enough, but he was very matter of fact, and it was starting to make me a little nervous. But he started going through my paperwork. So the paperwork that I had actually signed at pre-op for the anesthesia, he started going through that. He went through my medical history. And again, he was very nice, but he was just very matter of fact, kind of going through everything. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is really, really happening. So after he goes through all of the paperwork, I actually had to sign the paperwork again. So the anesthesiologist had me actually sign the waiver again, right then and there, right before the surgery. And this was the waiver that I had previously signed about a month before at pre-op. So I signed it again, and the anesthesiologist leaves, and he was like, okay, I'll see you in a few minutes. So he leaves. In comes the plastic surgeon, and he's so nice and he's so chipper, and he's like, well, how are you today? And I'm like, well, to be quite honest, I'm a little nervous right now. And he was like, well, I'm not. And it was kind of in that moment, I was like, okay, well, that's really all that matters. As long as you're good, then I guess we're all good, right? Like, just you be good and we're good. So, but that really kind of calmed me down just a little bit. You know, it really made me, I was like, okay, you picked this plastic surgeon for a reason. You trust him wholeheartedly. Trust him. Trust your entire care team. You will get through this. So that's kind of the things that I started to say in my head. So he kind of shuffled through some paperwork a little bit, and then he was like, okay, take the robe off. And I was like, what do you mean take the robe off? I just put it on. He was like, well, I'm about to do your markups, and it just helps if you're naked. I was like, oh my goodness, I did not realize he was gonna have to see me naked. So I take the robe off, and I'm standing there like this in front of the plastic surgeon who's on his knees in front of me doing the markups. So he does the markups. He does it in about 30 seconds or so. It doesn't take very long at all, but he's like, turn this way, turn this way, turn that. And so he does all the markups. And then when he's done, he was like, okay, I'll see you in a few minutes. And he leaves out of the room. I'm like, why are these people so happy this morning? I am just like a nervous wreck on the inside, and I'm really trying to be calm because I don't want to spike my blood pressure. I don't want to really get anxious. So I'm trying to be calm. So the nurse left out with the plastic surgeon. So I'm sitting in the room again, questioning my life choices, and the nurse comes back and she was like, okay, you ready? Let's go. And I'm looking at her like, well, where are we going? Because the last time I had surgery, it was about 10 years ago, and I was in a holding room on an operating bed, and they wheeled me into the OR on the operating bed. That's not what happened when I had my tummy tuck. So she comes in and she's like, okay, we're ready to go, let's go. And I'm like, where are we going? Where's the bed? And so, but I'm like, okay, whatever. So I'm walking out the room with the nurse, and we walk into the next room. The next room is the actual OR. And so I walk into the room, and the first thing that I notice are the windows. So the surgical suite is in an actual office building, and very, very nice office building. And the surgical suite, the operating room, is on the corner of the building. So one wall was nothing but windows, and I really like light. I like a lot of sunlight. And so when I walked in, that's the first thing I noticed. I was like, oh my, look at all the light coming into this room. I was like, that is a gorgeous view. And then I was like, but you know what? I won't even be awake to enjoy it. So I'm like, okay, it's a nice view, but whatever. So then my eyes panned from the window to the middle of the room. I kind of do this, and I see this table sitting in the middle of the room. Very skinny table, like this, skinny table. It had the armrest sticking out like this. So ladies, if you've ever had a C-section, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The armrest where they have you put your arms on the pads like this. And this is the operating table. And I'm looking like, oh my God, like I'm really freaked out by the sight of the operating table in the middle of the room. It's very small. It looks very sterile. And so I'm kind of freaking out. And so the nurse was like, okay, well, hop up on the table. And I was like, do what? Again, I'm used to being in a bed and being wheeled into the OR. That is not my experience here. So she's like, hop up on the table. And I'm like, okay. And so, I'm in my head, I'm like, this is really happening. I gotta really climb up on this table, and they're about to put me to sleep. And so I really started to kind of freak out in my head. Again, I'm trying not to get my heart rate up, but I'm really starting to freak out in my head. So I get on this table and I lay down, and a tear rolls down my eye, and the nurse hands me a tissue. So I'm dabbing the tear. The anesthesiologist comes in, and I'm still trying to wipe the tear, and I'm really trying not to like all out cry. And so the anesthesiologist comes in, and he's like, are you okay? Is everything, And I was like, no, I'm just really nervous. And he was like, okay, well, I'll give you something for that. And so I'm like, well, in my head, I'm thinking, well, why are you going to give me something for being nervous? Just knock me out. If you just knock me out, we'll be good, right? So he starts fiddling around, and he goes to put the IV into my hand. He grabs my hand. Now that is the worst place in the world for me to get an IV. I don't know why. I just freak out at the sight and the thought of IVs in my hand, and he grabs my hand to put that needle in my hand. And now I'm really freaking out in my head. And so I'm looking at him, but trying not to look at him. And then the nurse was on the other side of me. So he was on the left and she was standing on the right. And so I'm trying to like watch him, what he's doing to my hand, but I'm also trying to look away at the nurse because I don't want to see it. So he, he fumbles and fumbles and fumbles, and he finally he gets it in my hand, and he did a great job. At one stick, it was no problem, but again, I'm very anxious, and then on top of it, now he's putting it in my hand, which I hate. So he gets it in my hand, and he puts something into it, because I started to really mellow out, and everything was going in slow motion. And so I don't know what it was that he put in there, but it certainly calmed me down. So I'm laying there like this, I have the IV in my hand, and the nurse puts the oxygen mask over my face. And she didn't say anything. She just put the mask over my face. And so I'm just kind of laying there, and I'm just feeling really good. And so the next thing that I heard was the anesthesiologist say, "This is going to hurt." And when he said it, I knew what was about to happen, because a few weeks before I had a scoping procedure. I had a double scoping procedure. So they gave me anesthesia. And so when I was having that procedure, as the medicine went into my arm, it hurt. So I said to that anesthesiologist, that hurts. And he was like, "Oh, that's just the medicine working." And the next thing I was out like a light. So when this anesthesiologist said, "This is gonna hurt," I knew what he was talking about. He meant I was about to get the medicine and I was about to be out. And so that was the last thing I remember. He said, "This is gonna hurt." And then I heard voices as I started to wake up from the anesthesia. And I was shivering and shaking, and I was holding on to a bed rail with both hands. I was holding on to the bed rail, and my body was just shivering and shaking. And all I could say was, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And nothing hurt. I didn't hurt. But when I started to talk, when I started to say, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," I could tell that something was tight in my body. And it wasn't extremely tight, but I could just tell something was different. Something was off in my body, in my abdomen. Something was tight when I talked. And so my nurse, my post-op nurse, was Nurse Kate, and she was phenomenal. But Nurse Kate kept asking me, "Are you okay? Does anything hurt? Do you need anything?" And all I could really say in the very beginning was, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And I'm holding onto the bed rails like this, and I'm just like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." And I'm just shivering and shaking this anesthesia. So at some point in time, she asked me, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" And I asked her for breakfast. And she was like, "Oh, well, that's a first." I was hungry, and apparently people aren't hungry right after surgery. I wanted breakfast. She was like, "Well, I don't have breakfast for you, but I might have some graham crackers I can send you home with." And I'm thinking, well, I wanted a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit, but okay. But I'm still shivering and shaking. So she was just very nice. She was like, "You did a great job. You did excellent." She said, "I came into the operating room just as they were finishing up, and girl, you look amazing." Like, she was like really like selling this thing, and I'm just like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." But she was the sweetest nurse ever. So she starts to, in this, they put me in a faja. So I was in the faja already, and that's all I was in. And so she was like, I'm gonna start to dress you. And so she was like, she had me in the faja, and then she was pulling it up so that she could put the straps on. They put the faja on backwards to accommodate for the swelling that my abdomen was doing. So it was on backwards, and she was telling my husband, you know, tomorrow when she takes it off to shower, make sure she turns it around the right way. We don't want her wearing it backwards. We want her wearing it backwards home, but tomorrow turn it around the right way. And so as she was, you know, starting to strap me up, she was like, do you want me to put on your bra? You want me to put back on your underwear? And I just remember telling her, no, let the girls be free. And she started laughing. She was like, okay, so no bra it is. I had purchased from Amazon a button-down pajama set. And so she put the pajama set back on me. And like I said, all I had on was the pajama set and the faja. Then from there, you know, as I'm slowly waking up and I'm talking more and doing less shivering, she had me swing off the bed. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Because I'm like, I really, like, again, everything was tight in my abdomen. And I'm like, I just got cut open an hour ago and you want me to swing off the bed. But she helped me, and I, you know, swung my legs off the side of the bed, and she put my shoes on. She helped me into the wheelchair, and my husband was there. She was giving him instructions on what to do and medicines and things like that. And then she helped me into the wheelchair. Before I left, she did give me some pain medicine, and I can't remember exactly what it was she gave me, but she asked me, was I in pain? I wasn't in pain, but I felt tight in my abdomen, and I didn't know if that was really pain or just really tightness. So I told her I was in pain, and she gave me pain medicine. And then she told me that I could start the pain medicine that I had picked up from the pharmacy 4 hours after taking what she had just given me. And so again, she helped me into the wheelchair. She was giving my husband post-op instructions the whole time. She asked me about my leg strength. She was telling me now to get up and to get down, you know, you really have to use your leg strength. And I was like, oh, well, you know, I just ran a half marathon 2 days ago, so, you know, my legs should be really strong. She was like, oh, well, then you're gonna be fabulous. So she wheeled me down to the first floor, put me in the elevator. We got down to the first floor. She waited for my husband to pull around with the car, and she helped me into the car. Getting into the car was interesting, because I basically had to figure out how to get up out of the wheelchair, first of all. Of course, she helped me, but I had to figure out how to get up out of the wheelchair, and then to sit in the front seat, and then to scoot back, and then to swing my legs in, and all of this while not using my core muscles. So it was definitely a process indeed, getting into the car. So she helped me into the car, and we were on our way. What I found out on the ride home was that my surgery actually took about 2 hours. So they had planned for 2.5 hours. That's how long I was told that it would take for the tummy tuck and the muscle repair, but it was right at 2 hours. So I was on the table at 9:30, and the surgery was over by 11:30. I was in the car on my way home by like 1:10, 1:15-ish. So I was only in the recovery room for about 90 minutes before they put me in the car and sent me home. But I was ready to go home. I was okay enough to go home. I was just, the anesthesia was still there, hadn't really worn off yet. And I was just really sleepy. And I just kept, you know, I would talk a little bit. I was thirsty, and I didn't have anything to drink in the car. but I would talk a little bit, and it was just so much to expend that energy to talk. And I remember saying one time, like, okay, I think that's all of the talking I could do for right now. My husband drove me home. We got home. He helped me out of the vehicle, of course, and then he helped me up the stairs. I set up my nesting area in our second story loft. So he helped me up the stairs, and I actually stayed upstairs the entire first week. I didn't come downstairs until my first week post-op appointment. So he helped me upstairs. I had a wedge pillow set that I had set up on this sectional that we have in the loft. And that's kind of where I set up shop. I had a table that had like all of my supplies and my medicine and snacks and things like that. And I kind of set up on the sofa in the loft. My nurse did call my husband to check on me, and he was telling her that I was sleeping, what medicine I had already taken. She had given him some additional information about the faja that I had on, because we had asked about whether or not I could purchase another faja. So she had given me some information on the faja that I was actually wearing. And so the first day, I really just kind of slept a lot. The first time I went to the bathroom, I realized that I was bleeding. I was bleeding from what I know now, I was bleeding from my incision, which makes sense, right? I just had a major surgery, but I was taped up pretty good. And so the way that I figured out I was bleeding from my incision, I went to the bathroom, and the blood had soaked through not only my faja, but also my pajama pants. And so I'm like, that's an awful lot of blood to be taped up as well as I was taped up. And I couldn't at the time really tell where I was bleeding from because I was taped up so good. And so I ended up having to call the emergency hotline, and I talked to the surgeon on call, who wasn't really helpful. What he was telling me to do didn't apply to me because it didn't apply to my surgeon's technique. He was telling me something about gauze and taking the gauze and changing the gauze. I couldn't get to the gauze because I had so much tape on me. And that was never part of my plastic surgeon's instruction. When I had pre-op, and he talked to me and his nurse talked to me, that was never part of the instructions to pull off any tape whatsoever. And so I was like, yeah, I don't think that's gonna help me out. But what I found was that, of course, I was bleeding from my incision. It was normal, and by the next day it had completely stopped. I was no longer bleeding. But that is really what happened on surgery day. It was really quick. And they were very efficient in what they were doing. They got me into surgery, even though I was 30 minutes late. They got me into surgery on time. They got me out of the operating room early, and then 90 minutes of recovery, and I was on my way home. So hopefully that gives you an idea of exactly what happens on surgery day. Now, I know everyone's experience will be different. Some people will go to recovery houses and things like that. I wanted to stay local. I wanted to recover at home, but I also wanted to be close enough to my surgeon that if something were to go wrong, I was close enough to him to get back to him really quickly. And so that's why I chose to stay local and the surgeon that I did, but I was very happy to come home and recover at home. So hopefully this information has been helpful to you to kind of give you a glimpse into exactly what goes on during tummy tuck surgery day. If you are enjoying this content, please take a moment and give it a thumbs up. It would help me out so very much. And if you haven't subscribed yet, but you're loving the content, please take a moment, hit the subscribe button. I would love to have you here as part of our community, and I would love to be able to create additional content just like this, just for you. All right, see you in the next video.